Welcome to our webinar today. We're going to be talking about the Intelligent Product Engine and Knapsack's MCP. And we've got a rockstar team today that I will introduce to you shortly. But first, I want to talk to you about what we're going to go over. Obviously, we'll do intros and some housekeeping. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're building, the Intelligent Product Engine. We're going to talk about LLMs and the supply chain of digital production. Then our awesome Chris Bloom is going to demo our MCP, and you'll get to see a bunch of the different use cases that we have for that. We'll talk about the use cases, the economics of the intelligent product delivery, how things are changing, and then Q&A, like I mentioned. But first, like I said, some things that are happening. So we are going to be, well, we do events every month around the country, and we've got two left this year. We've got Austin in a couple of weeks, and we've got LA coming up in December. So really looking forward to that. We also do a generic platform demo. Today, we're obviously going to be focusing on MCP, but we do a weekly platform demo where Chris or John on our sales team will show you all the different things that Knapsack can do. We do more than MCP, and you can catch that every Thursday. So if you want to sign up for any of these events, please check out knapsack.cloud/events, and you will find us there. All right, so our speakers today, we've got, like I said, a rockstar team. We've got Sam, Amber, Chris, and Robin. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and Sam, we'll start with you.
Hi, folks. Excited to talk today. I'm at Knapsack. I work on AI engineering, and so bringing all of the AI stuff into Knapsack.
Awesome. And then I'm Amber Atkins. I'm the CX partner and positive vibes engineer, which essentially means I'm the softer side of Knapsack. I know that we are SaaS, and SaaS is hard. The struggle is real, and I try to make change a little easier on everyone and try to have fun along the way. So nice to meet you.
Hello, I'm Chris, highly caffeinated engineer. We are going to look at some generative AI using Knapsack today as well, and I'm excited to show you.
Hi, I'm Robin. I'm much less gray-bearded in my photo than I am in reality now. I'm head of product. I have been in and around the design systems space, in particular for the last decade plus. I have been at Knapsack. It's not that far shy of a year now. I'm very excited about the direction we're going and talking about how that all comes together today. Uh, so the intelligent product engine, what is it? Why is it a now thing? The way I kind of think about it is we've hit this kind of inflection point in how software gets built. The way we've always run things for the last 30, 40 years, to a certain extent, of digital product delivery, is there's this big gap between I have an idea and I can ship some kind of product feature or a new product. And you have product managers and designers and developers, and even in the most collaborative environments, it's still working very much in a specific sequence. And they're all translating and retranslating the same concept across different tools and abstractions and handoffs. So even in a situation, I've been lucky enough to work at organizations like IBM, which very, very much values design and design systems and has a very, very well entrenched design system that it's very collaborative with their product owners and developers as well. And even in a good situation like that at enterprise scale, there is still friction and there is still gaps in that handoff. And it's very difficult to sometimes see the connection between the original idea and the end product. And so the intelligent product engine is essentially our answer to, well, how can we collapse that gap and not just necessarily make everything faster, but how do we actually significantly change the workflows? How do we really get from the idea to everybody being able to work on the real thing as fast as possible? It's AI powered, but not AI entirely. We're talking about AI speed and human excellence that transforms product ideas into shippable implementations without requiring everyone to be a developer. It's the functionality and the democratization. And so it's not just another AI coding tool there. One of the biggest important pieces is context. It's not just generating code in a vacuum. It understands very, very deeply your design system that includes component libraries, patterns and standards, code, but also the broader context, your regulatory environment, your accessibility requirements, following all of your team's established conventions. And the reason why it's happening right now is because a lot of things are converging. We're at the point where AI capabilities have matured to where they can actually understand and generate some of that production quality code. And I think the big thing here is we need to, as an industry, make that leap between something that is vibe coded, great for me to play around with, and something that is real and shippable as an implementation on an enterprise scale. And design systems have reached critical mass, and I think they're one of the most, if not the most, important inputs into that flow. A lot of product organizations now have invested years building component libraries and more comprehensive design systems. But a lot of those assets are kind of trapped and documented and not operationalized for machines to read them. And then third, we've got the Model Context Protocol. The MCP is the thing that lets AI systems actually access and understand your design system as something that's living, queryable infrastructure, not just static documentation, but like an actual real source of truth. Sam has been working on some of the first pillars of this here, so I'll throw it over to him on some of his initial top level thoughts.
Yeah, it's I think the industry of design at enterprise scale, and every industry, it's having to wrestle and also adopt this new capability that we all have. And with AI, we're in a place where the former paradigm is changing. So we used to operate in a world where to get a computer to do something or deliver something for you, you had to be very specific about what you wanted. You needed to apply every input to directly impact the output. And what large language models and AI in general, but specifically large language models, are bringing into enterprises is the ability to guide and input a seed and see a tree grow from it. And that's both an amazing capability, but also very easy to completely go off in the wrong trail very quickly. You might plant that seed and want to get a maple tree, and you're getting a pine tree. And what do you do there? Well, now you have this tree that you're dealing with, and it's a lot harder to change that tree after it's grown than if you can shape it as it's being grown. And I think that part of our concept and our idea here is to be able to start from that idea. And as you're building, shaping, and generating your design system and your approach, the rules, the governance, the context that you bring to the table are always a part of that.
Yeah, I think a big part of it as well is what we're seeing right now is still to some extent kind of inaccessible. You need to know about LLMs, you need to know about MCPs, you need to know how to set things up, you need to know how to install Cursor and get up and running. Even if you're not a developer, you need some degree of comfort to have any confidence that what is getting spat out is coherent. And I think that what we're really trying to do is build on top of like these functional layers that are incredibly valuable in themselves, a workflow and an interface that can democratize that further. That my end point, when we think about the end point of the intelligent product engine and where we want to be fairly early next year is for somebody to be able to have an idea and not know what LLM their company uses, not know what an MCP is, maybe not even know anything about their design system or if they even have one, and still be able to go from an idea to something that is coherent and adherent very, very quickly.
That's great. I think this is probably a great time to talk about LLMs. So today we all talk about our LLMs, and we know if we're using Claude, if we're using ChatGPT, and I think in the future, Robin, just as you said, at some point we might all dip in a few different LLMs, or we might not even care which LLM we're using. I am curious. I think in Kim we have a poll here that we can share about if you're using an LLM in your organization, which ones are you using and which ones have you adopted? So one of the things we wanted to talk about today is what does AI unlock? As Robin's already mentioned, that we are in a new paradigm, but there's a few things that we really can take advantage of. One of those is conversational UX. What the conversational UX, what that does is it does allow you to take your context, so your design system, and have conversations with it in a way that you are not able to before. So it does change the paradigm of I have a question and I want an answer. Instead, you can really dive in. You can get as deep into the source material as you need to. We're democratizing machine learning, meaning that we're pulling it out of academics, out of the tech sphere, and providing machine learning to anyone with their phone, anyone at the enterprise who has an internet connection. And one thing that these large language models provide is understanding of design. So when I say that I have a spacing token that is either XL or small, it might be able to intuit that I'm missing medium or medium large. This is a new world of being able to understand what we're talking about when we're talking about design. And we want to take advantage of that and amplify that. With MCP, we can have the universal compatibility, so it doesn't matter where you're at, what you're working in, we can plug into where you work, and we can compose those capabilities, so we can pull in information from your design system, also with your code, also with your actual static design that you've built. And one thing that everyone talks about is agentic workflows, and my definition of that is just that I say one thing and the computer says 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 things before it comes back to me. And that's a way of saying I can provide an input and give control for a minute and then retake control after the computer is done. Perhaps 1 step, but perhaps 10 steps for me. But what's what's missing there is a context around your code, your rules, and your governance. If we go to the next slide there, Kim, the answer to this context issue that every LLM has, which they always bring their own context into play, which is outdated, it stopped learning at a certain date, and what it learned from was the internet. And the internet, while it's great, does not have anything to do with your context and your ability to do work. And so what the MCP does is it does operate as a plug. It takes your information, your context, your business rules, your external governance rules, and it moves it into your AI. So when you're working with Claude, you're working with Cursor, instead of it being broadly, generically assumptive about what it is that you're doing, now it can know specifically what your tokens are, the context around your design, your brand language. This context question is the question that we're all going to be working on in the next year, is how to manage that context, how to shape it, and how to mold an MCP so it understands the problems that we're trying to solve. So MCP is the way that Knapsack solves that problem for you. And we built this using a remote MCP server. So one thing that does for your organization is that instead of having to set things up locally, run software, do your own updates, we've built this on cloud infrastructure for you. So when your team adopts it, they can take a URL, plug it into their working environment, so their code environment or their chat environment, and it just works. It works with your permissions that you already have set up in Knapsack, and it works with your single sign-on, and it's always up to date. And now I'll hand it off, and we can talk a bit about use cases.
All right.
Wait, is this my go, right, Bloom?
Yeah,
Although I
go
want
for
to
it.
have a conversation with you about it because one of the things that I've been loving about playing around with our MCP servers, I'm not a designer, I'm not a developer. I work in change. I'm the one that helps the organization buy into what are the new capabilities that we need, or I'm helping design systems teams, recognize the value that AI can bring to their workflow versus it's not taking your job, it's helping you do all the things maybe that you don't want to do or that you don't have time to do. But some executive said, hey, here's a shiny thing that you have to go do. How do you actually level set that? And so I was hoping to poll this crew to understand like what are the use cases that are really bubbling up for you, right? And I'm not sure if we're ready to trigger that or not, but would love to hear some insights. There we go. So I would love to know from this crew, like what are the use cases that you're most excited to leverage an MCP for? I'm wondering if this is on your mind, right? I have found in the work that I'm doing, right, that when folks start to talk about AI, whether it's in a workflow or whether it's baked into their tooling, right, is they don't understand the value, they don't get the traction. We've all seen the MIT study, and if you haven't, we'll make sure to send it out to you later. But 95%, right, of these AI efforts are failing. And in my hypothesis is that these are experiments, right? Experiments require control. And if we don't know what we're trying to control, how do we measure, right, if it's working, right? How do we measure if it needs to change? How do we understand if it should be in my workflow? How do I move from, I love this concept of vibing to shipping, right? And when we have executives spending their Sundays on vibe coding, we might want to even give them a little more control, right? And if we don't want AI to happen to us, right? How do we start with control from the start? So, want to hear what your use cases are, so maybe we can have a discussion around that today with all of our experts. Let's go ahead and wrap that poll up. And while we see those respond, I think Kim, I would love to once those are ready, there we go. Hop back into that slide just so that you can have some visual fodder. But it looks like from everyone who has joined us today that we're spending or the use cases that we're most excited to leverage an MCP for is generating new design experiences, adapting existing components and designs, and analyzing gaps comes in sort of third there, right? I would say in the work that I'm doing, is depending on the stakeholders that I'm engaged with, right? A lot of folks just want to know, is my design system ready, right? Like for an MCP, AI, right? Robots need food, controlled data, good data in, good data out, right? We don't want to give it dirty data. So I really love to see that that's on your mind. I would love to hear from Rob and Sam and Bloom here, right? Like, how important is it to really understand the gaps in your design system so that something like an MCP can get you to a point where you can generate designs, right? Because there's a maturity curve to this. There's a chicken and egg if you really want to get to quality. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, I think I have a couple of thoughts. One is we've been interestingly the last 2 or 3 years where I think there's been some business pressure on design systems and design system teams to continue to justify their value. I think it's always been like there's been a kind of acceptance. Yeah, we need a design system. Okay, that's the first year of the design system investment. I guess we're done. Um, Now I think design systems and the quality and ongoing support of your design system become vital because the better your design system as a primary input, the better the output you're going to get from all of these tools. I think that's going to be important for making new things. And I think like making new things tends to be like that's the thing that's most exciting. But I also think that that second, it came second in the ranking, but adapting and addressing things that already exist in your product suite, like addressing design system drift, making sure that the products that get built can continue to update. I think that's going to be hugely important. And the design system, particularly, is the one part of this that can be both an input and an output in a very effective way.
Yeah, to
And I,
just add on top of that, right? With design systems, if for a team that you have, there's been an incredible investment into building this asset, this resource, right? And this is an opportunity to generate more value from something that has already been created. It's incredible. It's this amazing tools, this amazing holder of knowledge about your company, your brand, your business. And these tools, these things like MCP and these LLMs allow us to reach into that and pull more out of it than maybe just what is available today, right? So it's a value magnifier of something that your team has already spent effort in building.
What I actually, we have a question from our attendees here. Like, is this applicable to multi-repo teams who use multiple tools? And I wonder if that almost piggybacks off of what you were just saying, Bloom.
Yeah, it does. And what I'll demo here a little bit specifically in the knapsack context of knapsack, pulling in from all of these different resources, right? And acting as kind of an arbiter of those things. Multi-repo teams, knapsack generally pulls all those things into one place. And the cool thing about the MCP, which we'll see when we kind of get to play with some code here, is that the stuff that we can have knapsack reply to us benefits from all of those external packages or repositories because it's all in one place in knapsack.
The idea of, in my mind, right? We have the value of structured data depending on, right, the maturity of your design system and the quality, right? And one of the things that I've been most interested in, and the reason why I asked the use case is I have this hypothesis, right? If we're running around running experiences, how do we provide controls from the start? And so one of the things we're working really closely with on our clients is assessing where's your design system today in relation to its readiness for true value-driven output, right? Going from vibing to shipping. How ready are you for that? And what is the roadmap to get there, right? And in my mind, and I just had a conversation with a customer today struggling with this, they're like, what I need is help helping executives realize the validity of our design systems so that they continue to use it, right? Versus just making a new button because they don't like or understand how to use the one they have today. And so what I've been loving is use case driven discovery on where is AI going to make the biggest impact, right? And I think for anyone out there who's worried about it's going to take my job, wouldn't you rather be controlling that conversation than reacting to it, right? So I'd say it's a time to be strategic, and use cases in my mind are the place to start. I'm not sure if we have any other thoughts from Sam or Robin on some use cases that are bubbling up for them. Otherwise, my advice is know the use cases that are going to drive the value for your organization and then back yourselves out from there.
I'll just briefly say that one thing that's exciting is that we don't know the scope of the use cases yet. The thing that happens here is that design systems now are leaving just within the design team. And so if someone in marketing, someone in sales, there's materials now that in places where people do work that the design system can enter the conversation where previously it was not a part of that conversation. And I'm really excited about the kind of ceiling that has been blown off of where and when the design system can be used. It can be used while your CEO is vibe coding on a Sunday. And so there's actually, I don't think, a limit to use cases that now are possible. But as an industry and team, like you said, Amber, we're really focusing on what are the highest value and how can we enable those today, while still recognizing we've just shot the roof off of this possibility. Yeah. Should we
Awesome.
hand it off to Bloom for a look at under the hood?
All right. Do you nerds want to see some code? Let's go. Here we go. Here, I am going to share a large screen. You guys let me know if I need to zoom, okay, so that we can read stuff. Let me know if anything's not clear. But I'm going to start with the knapsack MCP server that we currently have connected to our design system. You can actually go see this online right now. app.knapsack.cloud, site, Toby. Okay, if we go to Toby right now, you guys can go see this. There's Toby, and you'll see a big old bear if you're in the right spot. All right. You can navigate our patterns, our words, our brand guidelines, all that stuff, and you can see what we have already put into Knapsack. Now, the cool thing here, and this gets into that question from earlier, is that all of our source code does not live here. Like a lot of teams, though a lot of teams, they use Knapsack in such a way that Knapsack simply installs code from other repos and other package repositories. But one thing that Knapsack is really good at is understanding your patterns and your code. Okay, look, we have a little avatar pattern right here. I can go look at my avatar pattern today. There's an avatar. There's my props, my properties that I can send to this thing. That's cool. We as Knapsack are a metadata engine, right? We store a lot of usable information about your patterns and documentation and words and implementation and guidelines that then becomes very, very valuable once we want to start asking robots to do stuff for us, okay? I'm going to show you Claude really quick. This is Claude, desktop Claude, okay? And you're going to notice that my desktop Claude is connected to our Toby Knapsack MCP server. So Claude now has context, and we keep using this C word all over the place. Context, 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 right? Our Claude agent, I'm currently using the Haiku model because it's very, very fast. I can simply ask it, hey, can you see this tool? Tell me about my tokens if you can. And it says, yeah, I see this. Look at this. You got a whole bunch of tokens and a whole bunch of groups. And then I said, hey, that's great. Make me a grid. Show me my tokens. Now, no code, no IDEs, no setting up tools or anything. Immediately understands my tokens, shows them to me, and has context to what we're doing in Toby so it can start making better decisions. All right. Now, cool thing here is that's the non-technical side of this, right? I can query this. I can ask it questions. I can do things like, which of my patterns don't have good documentation? And it'll respond to me and it'll give me this analysis of my entire system, non-code. Now, let's have the robots do some work for us based on what the effort is that we've already put into Knapsack. I have a blank canvas in front of me. I'm actually doing this in Knapsack. I'm querying Knapsack to get information that I'm gonna have a robot write back to Knapsack because I have all of my tools available in my local system. Now, if you'll notice, I'm in Cursor, right? A lot of stuff flying around here. I know it's a little intimidating, but I do just want you to notice this little guy right here, okay? And it says MCP Knapsack Toby. So the same tool that we connected to Claude, non-technical, is the same tool we're gonna connect into Cursor to get a little bit more technical and start generating some stuff, okay? Knapsack MCP understands all of our components. So when we ask it to make new things, it will write code for us according to how we've defined them inside of Knapsack. So depending on the quality of your code and your documentation, you get good output. Now, I have prompted Cursor already. I've said, all right, Cursor, I'm going to ask you to go do something here pretty soon. I'm going to ask you to make me something. Now, specifically, I am asking it to write code right here into this file. And when it writes code into this file, it is going to change this page and we're going to watch this thing work. It's not going to get it right away. It's going to iterate. So we're going to see some errors, but it's going to work through based on what it knows. So I'm going to say, let's do it. Make this thing. All right, so I asked it to make a 3-up card kind of column. We do not currently have a card concept inside of Toby. Okay, so what we see right here, if we go into Toby today and we go to patterns and we go down to card, we have not connected a card to our knapsack. I'm asking Cursor, and you can see it thinking right here, okay? I am asking it to go write me something based on stuff I already have. Now you'll notice, boom, whole bunch of code on this page just showed up on the left-hand side, all that green stuff, right? And you're going to notice it is pulling a whole bunch of predefined smaller Lego pieces that it is going to then attempt to assemble together until it stops getting errors. Now, this is the power of doing this inside of something like Cursor and inside of your local code environment. You have tools, you have linters, you have TypeScript, you have things that can watch this thing code and give it feedback on whether it got it right or not. Now, I'm going to flip back to the browser and we're going to see what it's made. All right, here we go. Big reveal. Did it get it? Oh, it's over here on this other tab. Oh, there it is. Okay, so that was blank before, right? We've got 3 card-like concepts ready and, you know, able to be further manipulated. Now I can ask it to do things like, hey, this is great. Let's tell you what, let's make our button error buttons, right? So here, we're gonna say, this is great. Can you make the buttons an error danger button that we already have in our design system? All right, it's gonna think, okay? This is this iteration process. It gives you something, you give it some feedback, it's going to go rewrite some code for us and try to build with something we already have. So it's reloading. Give it a sec while it's thinking and coding. I can see my code just changed in the background. There we go. There's my danger button that already exists inside of Toby Knapsack, right? Now, I'm not coding. This thing is coding. You can actually watch it iterate as it goes through each one of the cards that it has built to apply those danger buttons to all three of them, right? Now, let's take a look at the code that it's generated. It's made a brand new thing for us. It's using stuff we already have. Everything you see here, these are components already inside of Knapsack that we have to find. And this stuff is smaller, available, and the really important thing, and for any of the technical folks in the audience, this is not Cursor accessing source code and figuring this out. We've been able to do that in Cursor for a year now, right? Look at my source code, make me a new thing. Okay, what's powerful here is that Cursor, using our MCP for context, is simply using components according to how they've been defined inside a knapsack, because knapsack tells this robot, this is how you use a component, and these are the properties that are available for it. And you can see it's done a pretty good job of building all this stuff out. All of these pre-existing things, there is not a lot or very little custom styling here, right? We can ask a robot to go make me something with CSS any day of the week. The power here is that the robot is using all the stuff we've already coded without getting custom with it. It's using the constraints of our design system. So super powerful, super cool. Happy to show more examples or to do other prompts or to do other prompts according to how Toby works. But that's pretty much it for the demo. It was that simple. Hey, make me a thing using stuff I already have, and it goes, okie dokie, here's some code, right? That's powerful.
Yeah, what is fun generally is to throw in some challenge, somebody throw in a suggestion that we can ask our MCP to do in Claude.
And we can think of it from two perspectives, from the code perspective, right? The generative perspective, or the analysis perspective. I'm looking at it here in Claude. Claude's very good for this analysis, almost like softer side of the system, but we could also flip it to the more code, make me a thing. We can prompt stuff like this. Which of my patterns has terrible documentation? All right. Okay. Because of the way the relationships work inside an knapsack, our patterns are connected to potential pages, optional, and those pages can hold content about how to use a pattern. Now, the good news here is I have severely under-documented schema forms, text areas, grids, and containers. And you know what? That's right. Those are areas inside of Toby. We have done nothing for documentation, right? What do they say? The cobbler's kids have no shoes, right? This is kind of a place where we're not really doing the documentation effort. But here's the deal. It just told me that instantly. So if I ever had a push to go get better docs inside of my design system, I immediately know the linear tickets I could spin up from this to go work on these things. Here's the cool part. The better your documentation inside a knapsack, the smarter your LLM is about how to use and build and make using the components that you've defined inside a knapsack, right? So other side of this, we can also generate documentation based on what knapsack understands about the properties for a component, right? So if I want to do this, I want to be like, all right, hey, chip, okay? Make me a markdown file for documentation about the chip component based on what you know about its props. Okay, write me docs. Let's go. Okay, this fast. It's going to do it in Markdown. It's probably going to show it to the right-hand side. It might show it right here in the root, but now it's going to think. It's going to go query this. It's going to pull this up. It's going to hand it to the thinking model. Thinking model is going to be like, all right, I see you got these props. Let's make some docs for this, both for humans and for consumption by robots later. There we go. All right, there's my chip component. There's my props. That's way better than nothing that we already have. Look at that. Now, you see all this stuff. Let's go look at Chip today and take a look at if Chip even has something close to this. What's my overview tab? Nothing, right? Well, thanks, Claude, and the Haiku 4.5 thinking model connected to the Knapsack MCP server. I just wrote all the docs for my Chip component, and it took us about 6 seconds. So I like this. This is great. I've been using this a lot in my day-to-day, especially for the improvements to a design system for humans and others to be able to, have better context about how to use the stuff that we've already built. And I'm looking at Q&A here. I see a question. Yeah,
thanks
go
so
ahead.
much, Bloom. I just want to announce, make sure folks understand, there is a Q&A button in the chat. So if you have a question, go ahead and click that Q&A button on the Zoom, on the webinar, and just go ahead and write your question in there. So there's not a traditional chat. Use that Q&A button to get your questions in front of us.
I'll hit Derek's question just really quick. He's asking about accessibility. So one of the cool things about Knapsack is we do not have access to source on purpose, right? Knapsack is simply that metadata engine where you tell us the component, and it figures out the props. And then from those prop definitions, the MCP, and depending on your LLM, can do a pretty good job of guessing. For instance, if there are accessibility props that we want to give to people, right, to manually define accessibility, this is very good at being like, you're not putting an alt tag on these images, right? If you have an image component and it's missing an alt prop, this will pick it up and it'll tell you that immediately, right? So it really is from the perspective of props that you would allow a user to fill in when, building something with this. So it does a great job for that. The lower level code analysis, like in source to figure out accessibility stuff, depend on what you've already got in Cursor to look at source to do that for you. We've got an answer here of, do we cover iOS and Android? So one of the cool things here about iOS and Android is we do, in the future, we have a current line of work of being able to see iOS and Android render while using Knapsack. But today, nothing is stopping a team from putting documentation, defining properties, putting words about use cases when it comes to iOS and Android. The moment you put those words into Knapsack, now when you use the MCP server, the LLM has the context to give you answers about iOS and Android. So it really comes down to where do you put those docs? Some teams throw them in Figma and they're kind of lost forever. Some things throw them in a wiki, right? If you put this inside of Knapsack today, this MCP server can get to it. Because it can get to it, it can provide answers.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, the last thing that we're going to touch on, as Kim had mentioned, is talking about like, oh, what does this mean from a business perspective? Because there is the like, I can do cool stuff, I can make this stuff, I can update things, but from a business stakeholder perspective, the question is always like, okay, well, how much money is that worth? And I think that this is where it starts to, if you really dive into it, potentially get silly in terms of like how impactful it can be from an economic perspective. We're talking about unlocking, I think, billions of dollars of additional business value because I talked about it earlier, even if you have a well-staffed, mature, well-integrated traditional digital platform, you have all of those friction points. You can get a good amount of efficiency from design system usage and tooling. Um, but it's still predictable. You're still always doing the same thing. Um, One of my colleagues talks about we're continually trying to breed faster horses, whereas the intelligent product engine is we're inventing a car. The idea is you're bringing together all of those documentation, design sources, the code, you're onboarding all of it into a single place rather than a step-by-step process. So you can get to maturity of organization in a matter of months rather than years. But what that also means is you're just collapsing digital product delivery cycles almost entirely, um, because you're immediately getting to like the thing. You don't need to be working in an abstracted canvas because you don't even necessarily need that design artifact because the design artifact and the dev implementation that everybody's working on are the same thing. Um, Work that would potentially have had weeks and months of back and forth can be done in like a few days. So think of it as you don't ship every quarter, you ship every week. Now you could just say, okay, that's 13 times as efficient, 13 times more money. That's probably not how it's going to manifest. It's going to manifest in terms of like being better at stuff that you can learn 13 times faster, or you can build 13 times more uh, tailored to different personas type of product solutions. I actually think we're getting to the point eventually. Right now, we have algorithmic delivery of content. I think things like the intelligent product engine get us towards potentially algorithmic delivery of interface so that you, as a consumer, you, as a user, you have a different interface that is just right for you. Um, and I think design systems don't go away in that. They become vital inputs, but we're using that velocity to make everything else faster as well. So I do think, you start talking then about like massive changes that are industry defining. And if you're the only company that's doing that in your industry, then you can be an industry defining company in that space. This is just like a little bit about like the specifics of the roadmap of how we get here. So we've got the MCP now. Um, And that's the first stage. And I kind of think is like the intelligent product engine is something that is built on top of three pillars: MCP, ingestion or import of different sources, and composition assistance. So the MCP is like, here's how we provide the context. The ingestion agent is here are the sources that we are giving to the MCP, that we're feeding to it, to make sure that that context layer is as comprehensive and as realistic as possible, and to do it in a way that as a company you can weight the different sources in different ways. You can say, sure, my design system is my number one source, and our regulatory guidelines that we're providing as a source is our second most important piece of context, and so you can weight them in different ways. And we're adding, you'll see that right now, your knapsack design system site is what goes in and feeds your MCP. By the end of the year, we'll be seeing additional sources. Maybe it's your storybook, maybe it's just markdown, maybe it's an NPM package of your design system code, but we'll be continually adding sources. And the second part is the composition assistant. And this is, we know AI is non-determinative. Uh, Bloom, if he asked exactly the same things that he did earlier, again, would get slightly different answers. And it's really like, okay, they're using lots of different contexts, not just their MCP. So is there an underlying rules engine? Is there something that we can add that is an automated checker, validator, something that means that instead of just seeing the first thing that gets created, what you get at the end of the process, at the end of that, I have an idea I've generated, is something that is genuinely uh, valid and adherent to all of the guidelines within your company. And then the final part of that, once we built those pillars, is the democratization aspect. And that's what the intelligent product engine is. Now there is an interface, now there is a workflow so that anybody, not necessarily discipline specialists, can access that capability.
One, just to piggyback on that, I am one of those folks that are not of a designer dev discipline, and I'm using it. So Bloom here hooked me up with Cursor, and it's changing the way I work, right? And I know I ship different things, right? But my vibing's going to shipping really, really quickly, and I'm able to answer demand faster and better than I ever have before, right? So I'm pretty stoked on it. We do have a couple of questions here in the chat that I want to make sure we address. It looks like we've answered some of them in the chat. I wonder if we still have open ones.
The
Although
open ones, Chris. Oh, I
just
think
sure we covered them all off.
yes.
Cool.
Did we get Derek's? Yes. Did we get Derek's question? Yeah. Cool.
Cool. Sick. Sorry, I'm Hermione Granger. I like to make sure all our homework's done.
Like, Amber has called herself positive vibes technician for a lot longer than vibe coding existed, so she was very ahead of the game there.
I was apt for this. Um, well, and the one thing that I also on the economics thing, I know that I'm going a little bit backwards to go forward. And we had a question around accessibility. Right, I do a lot of work on what is the business case for this, right? And like how do we attach value to use cases as we discover them or as they hit us in the face? So we can either say yes, no, maybe so, right? Because some use cases I think we should say no to so that our yeses matter more, and it depends on your maturity. But the accessibility one I think is one that if we want to be leading edge, right? I as a design system team or as an organization, I think that's a really sweet spot. So find me on LinkedIn or wherever if you have any questions about that, because that's a space that I've been digging into, and I'd be happy to exchange some notes there on the accessibility impact here.
Sam, I wonder if you and Blue might just call out I think the security question that while you was answering
Yeah.
the test was good. I think let's make sure everybody gets to that because I think that's an important thing to touch on.
Yeah, there is questions, and we have talked with customers about this and helped our customers navigate this, which is, agentic AI might not be approved. So we have a question here about, is agentic AI approved, or agentic AI isn't approved due to security? We're trying to get Figma MCP enabled. It's been challenging. While the MCP server isn't AI, it does agentic AI to generate responses, and so there is a requirement here, which is that you have some access to an LLM. But it doesn't matter which LLM, once you have that access, as long as it can speak to the MCP, we can work with it. So you might have a local LLM that doesn't do agentic calls to, say, the internet, or it's maybe sandboxed or put on guardrails. Our MCP server can connect to that without accessing the or breaking your own security policies. So, and we're happy to work with you and to equip you as the one pushing forward on that conversation with exactly what you need to have those conversations through security review and through AI policy review. The LLM itself can be a piece that can change or shift, and the MCP server just needs to talk with that. The MCP server does not provide the agentic capabilities itself, and so it should be able to pass that security review.
All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, we are almost at time. So I'm going to say thank you for everybody who joined us today. I will be sending out a recording in the next few days, and this will also be living on our website and on our YouTube. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us at hello@knapsack.cloud. If you want to have a conversation with our sales team, please feel free to reach out at sales@knapsack.cloud. It is .cloud, not .com. And yeah, we're happy to talk to you at any point about pretty much anything. So let us know, and thank you all for joining. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a
Bye,
great
folks.
week.